Okay, ready for chapter 6 and where the red fern grows. Last we left off, he finally picked up his dogs in Tahlequah. Found out town wasn't so great of a place for a hillbilly. Um, then he was heading home and he stayed in a cave, and a mountain lion actually came around, but his vicious dogs kept him away. Okay. So obviously you get dogs and you want to turn them into coon dog or coon hounds. You got to train them. Also, he left his parents' house without asking, so they're probably not going to be too happy with him when he gets back. And Bella's here today to help me narrate. Okay. After the terrifying night, the bright morning sun was a welcome sight. I fixed breakfast and soon we were we were on our way. I tried to get pups to follow me so as to lighten up my load. They would for a way, and then sitting down in their neck and their rears, they would cry and whimper like that dog. Back in the sack they would go, with their heads sticking out and the holes in their long ears flopping. I moved on. About midday, I entered country I knew. I wasn't far from home. I dropped down out on the mountains in the bottoms of far above the place I had crossed the river in my own town. Staying on the left of the river, I followed its course past several campgrounds, but didn't stop until I came to the one where I found the magazine. Here I took the pups out of the sack and sat down on the warm sand. So that's where he found the magazine with the article in it. After the afternoon wore on, I sat there deep in thought. I was trying to think what I was going to tell my mother and father. I could think of nothing. Finally, I decided I would just tell them the truth. Truth is the best thing to tell them. And with help of the new overalls, cloth, and candy, I would weather the storm. My pups were having a big time playing. With their little front paws locked around each other, they were growling, rolling, chewing on one another. They looked so cute, I laughed out loud. While I was watching their romping, the thought came, I haven't named them. I went over the list of names, or when I was watching the romp, or went over the list of names. For him, I tried Red, Bugle, Lead, name after name, as and as before. For her, I tried Susie, Mabel, Queen, all kinds of names. None seemed to fit, like Bella. Right, Bella? Still mumbling names over and over, I glanced up. There, carved in the white bark of a sycamore tree, was a large heart. In the center of the heart were two names, Dan and Anne. The name Dan was a little larger than Anne. It was wide and bold. The scar stood out more. The name Anne was small, neat, and even. I stared, unbelieving, for there were my names. They were perfect. I walked over and picked up my pups. Looking at to him, I said, "Your name is Dan. I'll call you Old Dan." Looking at her, I said, "Your name, little girl, is Anne. I'll call you Little Anne." It was then I realized it was all too perfect. Here at the fisherman's camp, I had found the magazine, the ad. I looked over at the old sycamore log. There I had asked God to help me get two hound pups. There were the pups, rolling and playing in the warm sand. I thought of the old Casey baking powder can, the fishermen who fiercely had given their nickels and dimes, or freely. I looked up again, the names carved in the tree. Yes, it was all there like a large puzzle. Piece by piece, each fit perfectly until the puzzle was complete. Bella likes to be under the covers. Um, it could not have happened without the help of an unseen power. I stayed at the campground until dark. I knew I had to go home, but I put it off as long as I could. So he's been gone for 2 days. The crying of the pups telling me they were hungry made up my mind for me. I knew the time had come for me to face my mother and father. I sacked up my dogs and waded the river. As I came up to the bottoms, I could see the lamp light glow in the windows of our home. One of the small yellow squares darkened for an instant. Someone had walked across the floor. I wondered who it was. I heard Daisy, our milk cow, moo. I was thinking so hard what I would say. It startled me for a second. Reaching the gate of our house, I stopped. I had never thought our house very pretty, but that night it looked different. It looked clean, neat, and peaceful. Nestled there in the foothills of the Ozarks. Yes, on that night I was proud of our home. My bare feet made no noise as I crossed the porch. With my free hand, I reached and pulled the leather and worked the latch. Slowly, the door swung inward. I couldn't see my father or sisters, they were too far to the right, but my mother was directly in front of the door, sitting in her old cane bottom rocker knitting. She looked up. I saw all the worry and grief leave her eyes. Her head bowed down. The knitting in her hands came up to cover her face. I stepped inside the room. I wanted to run to her and comfort her and tell her how sorry I was for all the worry and grief I had caused her. The booming voice of my father shook me from my trance. He said, "Well, what have you got there?" Laughing, he got up from his chair and came over to me. He reached and took the sack from my shoulder. "So, is his dad upset?" "Doesn't sound like it." When we started looking for you," he said, "I went to the store and your grandpa told me all about it. It wasn't too hard to figure out what you had done, but you should have told us." I ran to my mother and, dropping to my knees, I buried my face in her lap. Probably owes his mom the biggest apology. As Mama petted my head, I heard her say in a quivering voice, "Oh, why didn't you tell us why?" I couldn't answer. They probably wouldn't have let him go, right? Between sobs, I heard the squeals of delight from my sisters as they fondled my pups. I heard my father say, "What's the other stuff you've got?" Without raising my head from my mother's lap, in a choking voice, I said, "One is for you, and one is for Mama, and the other is for the girls." I heard the snapping of string and the rattle of paper, and oohs and ahs from my sister were wonderful to hear. Papa came over to Mama, laying the cloth on the arm of her chair. He said, "Well, you've been wanting a new dress. Here's enough cloth to make half a dozen dresses." How many is that? Six, right? Realizing that everything was forgiven, I stood up and dried my eyes. Papa was pleased with his new overalls. My sister forgot pups for candy, and the light that was shining from my mother's eyes as she fingered the cheap cotton cloth was something I'll never forget. So everybody's happy because you brought them gifts. Don't forget that. Mama warmed some milk for the pups, and they drank until the little tummies were tight and round. As I ate, Papa sat down at the table and started talking man talk to me. He asked, "How are things in town?" I told him it was boiling with people. The wagon yard was full and the wagons and teams. He asked if I had seen anyone I knew. I told him I hadn't, but the station master had asked about him. He asked me where I had spent the night. I told him in a cave in the Sparrowhawk Mountains. He said that must have been the one called Robber's Cave. My youngest sister piped up, "Did you stay at night with some robbers?" My oldest sister said, "Silly, that was a long time ago. There aren't any robbers there now." The other one put her nickels worth in. "Weren't you scared?" "No," I said, "I wasn't scared of staying in a cave, but I heard a mountain lion scream and it scared me half to death." "Ah, they won't bother you," Papa said. "You had a fire, didn't you?" I said, "Yes." He said, "They'll never bother you unless they are wounded or cornered. But if they are, you better look out." Papa asked me how I liked town. I said I didn't like it at all and wouldn't live there even if they gave it to me. With a querying look on his face, he said, "I'm afraid I don't understand. I thought you always wanted to go to town." "I did," I said, "but I don't anymore. I don't like the people there and couldn't understand them." "What was wrong with them?" he asked. I told him how they had stared at me and had even laughed and made fun of me. He said, "Oh, I don't think they were making fun of you, were they?" "Yes, they were," I said. To beat it all, the boys jumped on me and knocked me down in the dirt. If it hadn't been for the marshal, I would have taken a beating." Papa said, "So you met the marshal. What did you think of him?" I told him he was a nice man. He even bought me a bottle of soda pop. At the mention of soda pop, the blue eyes of my sisters opened wide. They started firing questions at me, wanting to know what color it was and what it tasted like. So remember, Billy never had that before, so obviously his sisters haven't either. Um, I told them it was strawberry and bubbled and tickled as I drank it, and it made me burp. The eager questions of my three little sisters had an effect on my father and mother. Papa said, Billy, I didn't want you to feel badly about the people in town. I don't think they were poking fun at you. Anyway, not like you think they were. Maybe they weren't, I said, but I still don't ever want to ever live in town. It's too crowded and you couldn't get a breath of fresh air. In a sober voice, my father said, Someday you may have to live in town. Your mother and I don't intend to live in these hills all our lives. It's no place to raise a family. A man's children should have an education. They should go out and see the world and meet people. I don't see why we have to move to town to get an education, I said. Hasn't Mama taught us how to read and write? There are more to education than just reading and writing, Papa said. Much more. I asked him when he thought we'd be moving to town. Well, it'll be some time yet, he said, but we don't have the money now, but I'm hoping someday we will. From the store where they were heating or from the stove where they were heating salt water from my feet, Pop or Mama said in a low voice, I'll pray for you and the night for the day to come. I don't want children to grow up without an education, not even knowing what a bottle of soda pop is or even seeing the inside of a schoolhouse. I don't think I could stand that. I'll just keep praying and someday the good Lord may answer my prayer. I told my mother I had seen the schoolhouse in town. Again, I had to answer 1,000 questions for my sisters. I told them it made of red brick and bigger than Grandpa's store, a lot bigger. There must have been at least 1,000 kids going to school there. I told all about the teeter-totters that swing out the log chains, or made of log chains, and the funny-looking pipe that ran out the side of the building, and how I had climbed up in it and slid out like the other kids. I didn't think they had to. They, I didn't tell them how I came out. I think that was a fire escape, Papa said. Fire escape, I said. It looked like a slide to me. Did you notice where it made the bend up at the top? He asked. I nodded my head. Well, inside the school, there's a door, he said. If the school gets on fire, they open the door, and the kids jump in the pipe and slide out to safety. That would be fun to do, huh? I wish we had one of those. Boy, that's a keen way of getting out of a fire, I said. Well, it's getting late, Papa said. We'll talk about this some other time. We'd better get to bed and have a lot of work to do tomorrow. My pups were put up in the corn crib for the night. I covered them with shucks and kissed them goodnight. The next day was a busy one for me. With hampering, with the hampering help of my sisters, I made the little dog house. Papa cut the ends of his check lines and gave them to me for collars. With painstaking care, deep in the tough leather, I scratched the name Old Dan on one and Little Ann on the other. With a nail and a rock and I made 2 holes were punched in each of the end straps. I put them around their small necks and laced the ends together with baling wire. That evening I had a talk with my mother. I told her about praying for the 2 pups and the magazine and the plans I had made. I told her how hard I had tried to find names for them and how strange it was finding them carved in the bark of a sycamore tree. With a smile on her face, she said, Do you believe God heard your prayer? I helped you? Yes, Mom, I said. I know he did, and I'll always be thankful. Okay, that was chapter 6. So Billy didn't get in trouble, so he didn't get spanked when he got there, and now he has a couple pups. So um, make sure you guys are getting your work done this week. We're learning about triangles, so make sure you're watching those videos, and I hope you had a wonderful weekend.